sometimes like the greatest teachers are right in front of us if we're really willing to see the lesson. And for me, I mean, that moment I will never forget, and it really was a turning point, such a big turning point. But that's not to say that like I'm totally past this belief. I still see it show up, and I still have to like go back and remember that moment all the time, because that has been my biggest limiting belief, is that it has to be hard work in order for me to have more success.
Welcome to Powerhouse Women, the podcast for women who know they are ready for more. I'm Lindsay Schwartz, your host and the founder of Powerhouse Women, and together we'll unlock the confidence and clarity you are looking for to help you get out of your own way and into action around your next big idea. Before we get into today's episode, I have some really exciting news to share with you. If you didn't already see, our famous Powerhouse Women event is back for 2021. And I'm so excited I can barely sleep. This is a day of inspiration, connection, and real conversations about what it takes to bring a big idea to life. You do not need to have a business in order to attend. This is really a day for anyone who is looking to expand and grow in their career, their business, their life. They're looking to connect with like-minded women who will genuinely support them and who believes that we're just not meant to do business or life alone. So something tells me if you listen to this podcast, those three things describe you. This year, we're going to have a virtual and an in-person option. So if you cannot travel, are not ready to travel, we've got you covered. But if you want to be in that room live, here's what you need to know. There are going to be limited tickets available, and we are already over 50% sold out. Depending on when you hear this, we may or may not have tickets left. So if you know you want to be in that room with us in Scottsdale, Arizona, September 10th and 11th, you need to go to powerhousewomenevent.com, grab your ticket, plug into this global community of women, and I cannot wait to see you there. Now let's get to today's episode. Thanks for tuning in today. I am answering questions directly from our community. And a few weeks ago, we had put out a survey. We're actually putting together a whole free resource for you all that'll be ready really soon. So excited. We wanted to know, like, what are the questions you actually want to know? What would you love to ask another successful woman if you could just sit down over wine or coffee and like have her give you the real answers? Not the Instagram, like picture perfect answer, but the real answer. And we actually we saw these themes. So what's going to happen is when we release this free resource, it's going to be organized into a couple different categories. And these questions were so good. I can't wait for you to hear this resource, because we actually interviewed 25 different women and we asked 25 different questions, got a variety of answers, and like the real stuff. So it's going to be coming really soon. But I thought for today's episode, there were so many great questions about money and wealth, and like, where do you invest, and how do you know when it's the right time to invest in your business? So I'm going to answer 3 of my favorite money questions that were asked by our community. And this is just a teaser because, like I said, we have an amazing free resource in the works for you, and it's going to be ready really soon. I cannot wait to share. But there were some amazing questions. So we'll probably start to cycle some of these into podcast episodes, because you guys are, I mean, you're way better interviewers than me. You had really great questions. Okay, so these are 3 of the top questions that people asked about money that I thought were really, really good. And I'll give you my answer today. And then I can't wait for you to hear from some of the other women we interviewed, because they're brilliant. The first one, and I love to talk about mindset and belief, especially when it comes to money. And one of the questions that our community asked was, what has been the biggest limiting belief around money that you've had to work on, and how did you overcome it? And there have definitely been a few for me that I've had to overcome, specifically around money. The biggest one, hands down, and it's actually still the one that I have to do the most work around, is that it has to be hard work. that it has to be hard work in order for me to deserve a lot of money in exchange. And so how I see this showing up in my life is I will create extra work. I will not let people help. I will not delegate. And it really kind of comes from this rooted belief that I have to earn it. And so I think it's, we all have our own versions. We all have our own stories, and it doesn't even really matter where those came from. Like, yeah, it can be interesting sometimes to realize it, but I think that the way we work through them is first to become conscious, like to acknowledge, and then to catch ourselves when we're in the act of thinking that way and keeping that belief alive. So I'll share this story because, again, I promised I would give you like the real version. So one of the things that really helped me to break through this, I've shared this story. I've shared it before. I don't know if I've ever shared it on the podcast, but I've shared it like with our mastermind and different groups of people, that I have been blessed with the polar opposite in my spouse, in my partner. And you've probably heard, if you've listened to any of the Powerhouse Spouse episodes, you can kind of get a sense that like we're wired very differently. And I'll never forget, this was the day that I really just saw the impact of this money belief, and how if I didn't reframe it, it was just going to keep me really frustrated and burnt out and feeling like I was working harder than the results that were coming back. And what happened was we were the first year in our new house that had a pool, and we live in Phoenix, so it's really, really hot. And in the summers, what we love to do is at the end of the day, we'll float. So he had come to me, it was like noon on a Monday. And I remember I was like, who does he think he is asking me to float and take time off in the middle of a day on Monday? And I know some of you can relate to this. Like, you are wired, maybe like me, to like, especially in the beginning of my week, that's when I have my most creative energy. Like I love Mondays. I love to, get into the work that I'm doing. And, he had the audacity to ask me if I wanted to float at like noon on a Monday. And I was like, first of all, pissed about that. But then I was like, okay, no, you actually don't have anything you need to do right now. You can do this, take time, connect with your husband. And so we, we're in the pool and just enjoying ourselves. And his phone rings and he hops out and he, grabs the call. And then he comes back into the pool. And just like with this great, like just carefree energy, he goes, babe, I just closed the biggest sale of my career. And he's in medical sales. So this was like a big win, a financial win for our family. And then he like jumps back in the pool, grabs I think he was like drinking a cocktail. And if you know Elliot, that's very on brand. And I remember in that moment, instead of celebrating this like huge win for my partner and huge win for our family, like financially, I was mad. I was like frustrated that it was like so easy for him. And I just found myself going into this spiral mentally of like, why is it so easy for him? Why do I work so hard? Like this drama. And it was like this moment where I literally zoomed out and I caught myself. Like I literally just like zoomed out as though I was observing myself in this moment and just realized like, wow, here you are thinking that it should be harder work or there couldn't be fun and play and this sense of ease around success. And to be honest, like if I'm really being real, there were even times where I would judge the way he works because it didn't look the same way as how I show up in my work. Because I'm the crazy person who creates more work just so I can feel worthy. And in this moment, I like had this moment where I zoomed out. I saw how mad I was by the fact that like he had this success and then had the free time to take, a half of a Monday off. And I was like, who is this? Like, why am I reacting in this way? And is this the way that I really want to be? And I will never forget, that was such a turning point for me, realizing that I actually had the best example of how to bring more ease and fun and play into success and achievement. And no joke, that year was the year that I actually had the biggest launch I've ever had, the biggest collaboration. I earned more in a matter of 3 months than I had ever earned in a year. And I really credit it back to that moment and really being able to catch myself in the act of this deeply rooted belief and pattern that it had to be hard work in order for me to have more success. And so sometimes, I don't know if any of you are like married to your perfect polar opposite. Sometimes like the greatest teachers are right in front of us if we're really willing to see the lesson. And for me, I mean, that moment I will never forget. And it really was a turning point, such a big turning point. But that's not to say that like I'm totally past this belief. I still see it show up and I still have to like go back and remember that moment all the time, because that has been my biggest limiting belief, is that it has to be hard work in order for me to have more success. So question number 2, this is such a great question, and I hear it a lot, especially within, right now we're kind of going through some of these modules within our 6-figure school course, and it's the question of what's your best advice for figuring out what to charge for your product or service? And I love this question because oftentimes I think I might have actually done an episode on this, or I've talked about it before, that a lot of times the question we ask ourselves when we're setting our prices is just the wrong question to ask. And that question is, how much would someone be willing to pay for this? So like, how much do I believe a person would be willing to invest in this program or this product or this service? And I think there's just a better question that we can ask. And that question is, how invested does this person need to be in order to get the transformation they really want? The transformation that I'm really promising them. This is especially true when we're charging for like our time. So if the thing you're selling and the thing you're putting a value on is your time and energy. So if you're a coach or a mentor or you're working with people one-on-one, that's oftentimes where it's a little tougher to come up with like, well, what do I charge people? They want to consult with me. What do I charge? And I used to find myself going into this default of like, well, what would people be willing to pay? But when we're asking that question, I think we're really doing people a disservice, because if they're coming to you for transformation, they are coming to you wanting to be stretched. You know, they are coming to you and they don't have the result in their life right now and they want it and they want you to show them the way. They're going to need to grow and they're going to need to evolve and step into something uncomfortable in order to achieve that. So the question I ask myself is, how invested does someone need to be in order to show up in the way that I know will have them produce the result that they want? And I'm not worried if they're going to be turned off by that price or if they'll think it's outrageous, because the person who's ready, really, really ready for that transformation, that person is going to see the opportunity in stepping into that investment versus something that feels comfortable. Because even though sometimes people think, or like as a consumer, I think that I want to be comfortable with an investment I'm making, when it's an investment in my growth, so if this is the kind of product and service that you're offering, it's not supposed to be comfortable. It's actually not even supposed to be comfortable for you to ask for that price, because you should also be charging the amount that has you step into your highest self, that has you show up as the version of you that's actually going to have them produce the result. So while it can be really helpful, and I actually think it's great to do market research to see where you're positioned in your industry, a better question to ask is, how invested does someone need to be in order for them to get the result they want? And then the second question is something you can ask no matter what you sell, where the first one is a little bit, I think, more tailored to providing a service where you're working one-on-one or coaching or mentoring someone. The other question is, okay, let's set the price that I really want to charge, even if it's for your product. And you're like, you know what, I want to charge X. Then the question you need to ask is, how do I build in so much value and demonstrate that value to such a level that it makes that price a no-brainer? So again, there's nothing wrong with saying like, what would someone be willing to pay for this? But a better question is, what do they need to pay in order to be invested at a level that actually has them get the result they want? And then just, how do I build in so much value into that price that it makes charging the amount I want to charge a no-brainer? So it's okay if you feel kind of like weird about this, or at first it feels really uncomfortable asking for the amount you want to charge. I think that's a good thing. I think it's good for us to stretch ourselves. And I'm not saying like put an outrageous price on something if you haven't yet developed the skills or the expertise in order to be able to provide the value. But just know that there's no rule book. And if you think about even just like luxury brands, there's really just something that they've done to build in the prestige where it makes that price and that item valuable enough that someone would be willing to pay that price. So it's all subjective. It's really all psychology. There's no rule for how much you can charge or should charge. And the people that you really want to serve need to be invested enough in order for them to get the result that you're promising them. So I love that question. I know that's kind of just scratching the surface, but hopefully you heard just some better questions you can be asking yourself instead of what would someone be willing to pay. Okay, and then the last one is, what were some of the best investments you made in early stages of your business, and how did you know it was the right time to invest? This is such a great question, and I've been really open with sharing like how much I believe in mentorship. I think knowing when to invest in mentorship is really a question of, what is it that you're trying to learn, and is there someone that already knows it where, yes, you might be parting with money, but you're gaining time. You're shortening your learning curve. So I'm a big believer in investing in mentorship as soon as you're able. Even, I'm not a fan of going into debt. I'm never going to be the person who tells you just to throw it on a credit card and figure it out. I don't necessarily think that creates the right kind of environment for your greatest expansion, but I do think that setting money aside to invest in mentorship as soon as you're able is a really, really smart move, because you're just going to shorten your learning curve. So that's no surprise. I talk about mentorship all the time and how much it's made a difference in my life and business. But another best investment that I made, and this is really going to depend on what type of business you're starting, is I do think it's important to invest in professional photography and sometimes even videography. Again, depending on the kind of business that you're running, we're just living in such a social media driven and visual content driven society that figuring out how to put the best foot forward is crucial. It can literally make or break your brand. That if someone goes and looks you up on social media, which, let's be honest, like when I'm looking into someone that I may want to work with, I go to their social media profile before I even go to their website oftentimes. Or that's where I'm going to their social profile to just take a quick peek and then to grab their URL for the website right from their social media account. So it's actually really important to think about visually how you are presenting yourself or your brand to the world. It can literally make or break whether or not someone trusts you. And I would just say, if you're starting a business, that's just an area where you're going to have to invest. Now, you don't have to go and hire the most expensive photographer. There's amazing services and photographers. You could even barter with a photographer and have them take your photos in exchange for maybe a consultation or whatever it is that you offer. You can find someone who's also looking to build their portfolio and trade services or barter. You don't have to invest a lot of money, but I do think it's really important in the beginning to invest in the visual representation of your brand, because that's what people are going to be determining and making their judgment about whether or not they want to work with you or buy your product a lot of times by how it's visually presented online. And that's just kind of the world that we're living in right now. So that's one of the first places that I would say to invest. I wouldn't say to invest in things like building out a whole website or, anything that is going to take a lot of investment of time or energy, because in the beginning, your business grows and evolves really quickly. So you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a website or a huge branding package until you really know exactly what it is that you're offering and what you're going to move forward with. But
at the basic level, investing in your brand with some of those visual elements of great photography, great video to tell the story, that can be one of your best tools for getting your business off the ground and serving those first few clients or selling those first few products. And I think that is the smartest place to invest right away in the beginning. So these questions are awesome. There's so many more, and we'll definitely be incorporating more of these into upcoming podcasts. But I want to know, what has been one of your biggest limiting beliefs around money? You can text us. One of my favorite places to connect with our community is through our text mentorship list. And this is a place where totally for free, twice a week, once or twice a week, I'll send a quick business or mindset tip. And it really is me texting you back. So I go in there, and even sometimes I'll host like live Q&A sessions where for an hour I'll sit there and I'll just answer as many questions as I can. So the place to connect, and I want you to send me your biggest mindset limiting belief or money limiting belief that you've had to work through, or maybe you're still working through. And the place you can text that to me, you can actually just send the word mentor to the number 602-536-7829. And that's our text mentorship list. We send free resources there. It's also a place where you can connect with us and ask questions about the event or programs that are coming up. And it's one of my favorite ways to connect with this community, like in real life, beyond just the podcast, beyond, social media. It just feels way more personal. And like I said, it really is me answering those text messages. So, it's not a bot. It's not someone on my team. It's like actually me. So I know like when I have loved podcasts and feel like, gosh, I just connect with this host, or it would be so cool to actually get to like interact with them. That is the place that I do that. So definitely send me a text if you want to connect. Share with me what you took away from this episode or your biggest limiting belief around money. I can definitely give you some pointers or some of my favorite books that I've read. So just text me the word mentor to 602-536-7829, and I cannot wait to connect.